Hey, I'm Jeremy and welcome back to Blender for Designers. Today we'll be building a box, but instead of unwrapping a cube, I want to build like a real box with die lines. So you can probably see the flaps and the kind of way it's intricately put together, and that you can unfold it into die lines. This is the box I built way back in the first episode, the physical manifestation of it, but I'm not actually going to build that literal box. I'm going to be kind of designing my own box, just sort of arbitrarily, and using a couple others as examples. So quick refresher on how boxes work. Made this animation a while back to show you how a box folds, and let's take a look at it. So you can see that folds into a box. Now I'm going to go ahead and reverse it again so you can see that it folds out to a lay flat, or a flat object. And that is basically the die lines. The die lines describe how this is carved out. So we want to see how we can create a die line for our boxes. Now there's a couple different ways to approach this. This one, which you just saw, has 4 flaps on the bottom, and then it's got a slightly different top. This top actually tucks right into it. Has a top that covers the whole thing and tucks right in like this. You can kind of see that. Now this one actually has the flaps on the side. I believe it's called a side loader. And you basically tuck these in on the side, and then this winds up. I'm not doing this great, but this kind of winds up on the top. And as you can see, there's a little nifty thing here with this little shape here, allows it to tuck in. I'm sure you've seen these on snack packages, and we'll hold that for you. So I kind of actually I don't want to do the slide loading, but I do want to reproduce that bit. So as we open Blender here, you'll see we have no cube up there because we're not going to start with a cube or a box. We're actually going to start with the flat bit, the die lines. So what we're actually going to want to start with is a plane. And now let me get my little face out of the way and we'll get started. So let's zoom in a little bit and see what we got. Going to hit numpad 7 to go on the top. Going to hit N to bring up the dimensions, and we see you have a 1x1 plane. This is Blender 101, guys. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and, instead of calling this plane, I will call this box. Okay, so first thing we want to do, this is going to be the front. So first thing we want to do is make the sides. And I think I'm going to make a 2-to-1 box. So what we're going to do is we're going to extract in X and go to basically 1 over. So that's going to be, so we're going to 2, and then same thing here on Y. EY, EX, or GX now that I've extracted already. And then we're going to go to -2. So this here is going to be the front. This is the left side. That's the right side. And we'll create the notch in the right side. So now let's go to the bottom. The bottom's going to be more of a flap. So we're going to extract in Y. And we're going to go down. It's going to have to cover the whole thing, but we don't want to quite cover it because it's just going to be a regular flap. And then we're going to, we'll do the scaling in a minute. And then we want these side flaps here on the bottom. So we're going to go, actually, you have to do this one at a time, otherwise it's going to extract the whole thing. So we might be able to get away with this. So we're going to extract in Y again. We have 2 other flaps that only going to come down part way. And so, yeah, you can see I moved to edge select instead of, because if I had done vertex select, it would have extracted 3 things. So we're going to do the same thing here. EY, get these little flaps here. And then let's actually start creating the back. So I want to have the notch here on the right side, like I did in the illustration I did, or in the animation I did. So these are going to be the same dimensions. And, this is the same, this is the back, the front, so this back should be the same dimensions. And some of you are going to say, hey, wait a minute, they're not going to be exactly the same dimensions because the box itself is going to have a thickness. We'll get to that. We will get to that, I promise. But let's do the same dimensions at first. So we're going to extract an X, and we're going to go 2 over. So this should take us to -4. So we have 2, 1, 2. I mean, we can change the math or whatever, but we're going to keep it simple for now. And then what we want to do is we're going to, first of all, let's finish up the bottom here. We're going to extract in Y again, and we're going to go down. We might as well make these the same size. So scale Y 0. And then we're going to do the front flap. And so the first one, we're actually going to do the back before I do the front. E in Y again. And so we want to go at least a bit more than halfway. And again, we can just do this by eye. And then on this one, we're going to also go a bit more than halfway. But we're going to do that notch thing I was talking about. So let's go back into vertex mode, and then we're going to do a subdivide. W subdivides. And we're going to do, let's do 1, 2, 3, 4 subdivisions. May not be enough, but we'll get started there. And then just looking at the notch here, yeah, actually we're going to probably need more than 4. We're going to need probably 6. Okay, cool. So we'll scale these out. Scale in X. Scale these in. Scale in X. And again, I'm just doing this visually. And then we'll carve out the notch like that. And then we'll scale the notch in X. And again, I'm just doing this visually, just what looks right. I'm sure there's ways of doing this exactly, and it doesn't honestly matter that we're just doing this as an n-gon, because we're going to fix that up a bit. And I think this comes back. This is not quite all the way to the front. And maybe scaling this in a little bit. So there we go, got a nice little notch. All right, so now we want to actually fold this thing. See, this is well, oh no, we're not quite done yet. We want a tab. So we're going to go back to edge mode. Tab can be over here, tab can be over there. It doesn't really matter. Actually, I'll put the tab over here. So we're going to go extract in X again. And here's where we start making it look more tabby. So we're going to scale in X. Oops, scale in Y, excuse me, SY. And there we go. So this will fold under here. This will fold over here. This will fold over here, and these little tabs will go under. So let's do that. Let's get let's make these tabby now. So scale in X. Let's make these tabby. Scale in X. Let's make these tabby. We don't want to scale that much in X, but we want to scale a little bit. There's something goofy happened. Turns out I had 2 of them there. Not that much, actually. You don't want to scale too much on this. And I could probably do these exact, but it's fine to do these just visually. Apparently there was doubles there too. So again, just a little bit. And then probably this one too. We'll actually have to do the vertexes. So there we have basically a full set of die lines. You can actually probably print these out and create, an actual box for them. But we won't be printing anything out. We will just be folding. Now, before we fold, we should realize that this is not, in fact, this is not in fact a flat object, but actually has some thickness to it. So we should create some thickness. So I'm going to go back out for a sec, and I'm actually going to go into my node editor here. I'm going to delete the timeline. We don't actually need that. But I'm going to bring up a node editor, and I'm going to create a material for this box, which we will call box. And we don't need that. We don't need these either right now. But what we do need is a modifier. We need specifically a solidify modifier. And now solidify modifier will work on a plane. It is not just for things inside. I mean, this will be a box later, but you can see now it's created kind of an edge. Probably a little thick right now. Let's go to 0.05 because we don't need this to be terribly thick. But yeah, it's kind of created a, kind of an edge. And if we don't want the inside to be exactly like the outside, which we do not, we have to put this material index on. And then we need a second material. So this is the box, and we'll call this second material inside. And just to make it differentiate a little bit, I'm going to make the color a bit different. I'm actually going to do this by adding Shift-A, input RGB, because I may change the color later. But we're going to make this kind of a brownish yellow. Like, let's pretend it's just like a tan on the inside, and then, I don't know, coated or something on the outside. And that way we can see, we can kind of see the difference. Now you could sort of compensate for the thickness by maybe increasing some of these, but we'll worry about that after we folded it. So let's fold it. So what we need to do is we're going to go back into edit mode. We were already in edit mode, but and then we're going to put the cursor, snap cursor to active, and then we're going to start rotating the flaps. So we're going to I'm going to get all the flaps here. And we're in vertex select, so we're going to rotate around this cursor. So we're going to rotate in X 90 degrees. Oops, we actually want rotate in X minus 90. So there we go. Those are all folded over. Let's do the same thing with the bottom ones. Doesn't matter which one, but cursor to select, cursor to active. Love that feature that goes back to your last command, because deselect everything, then box select those bottom ones. RX, these are going to be 90. And then let's fold this other tab here. So snap cursor to active. RY, I'm going to guess 90. Nope. RY minus 90. All right, so now we have our basic thing that needs to fold in. Then this whole section needs to kind of rotate around this way. So let's do that. And right now we're going to intersect. We're going to start intersecting with everything. We'll fix that in a minute. So actually, let's get the cursor here first. And then it's kind of a weird angle, isn't it? RY 90? Yep, there we go. Whoop. Ooh, we have a weird, is that an intersection or is that, I don't know, these have to be selected too. RY 90. There we go. So now we have an intersection. We'll fix that in a minute. So what should I say was the front? Okay, so let's just go back to the 7. And then, right, so we need to get this whole selection here rotated. Well, let's get the cursor again over here. Get this whole section here, including these two, and I probably missed one back here. Yes, I did. And then we're going to go RY minus 90. Oop, missed a section. RY minus 90. I keep missing things. That we don't need to do. RY minus 90. And then we're going to go here. And then just these bits. RY minus 90. And there we have a folded box. I actually kind of want the box to be oriented front ways. So we're going to select everything again. And RX90, I believe. Oop, not along the cursor this time, along the median point. RX90. Woo. Not sure what happened there. Oh, doing everything. Let's do it. Go for the front view. That's I hit number 1, RX90. Just want to make sure that's correct. I believe that is. Yeah, that should be the front. Okay, cool. And then I'm just going to get this oriented to kind of the center bottom here. I like putting things on the bottom. They're easier to manage that way. Okay, so now we have our little box in this perspective. That's orthographic. But yeah, all the lines are intersecting and everything looks awful. So first off, we want to do is get these tabs to move in a little bit because they're going to be the ones that are the lowest. So right now it's actually really good to be on like, oh, we don't need to be on X-ray selection, but we can go on X-ray selection here so we can kind of see. And now we moved everything so it's reoriented. So we're going to scale this in Z. And then again, we're using median scale. So we're going to move the tabs just up like this. And then we want to move, this flap is going to be up a little bit, and that flap is going to be down a little bit. So let's move this top flap. We can actually do a plain select, and then just get rid of that line, and then just move this whole thing up slightly. Get rid of these lines as well. Side ones. We'll get rid of the vertices. And then we can just move this up a little bit. And then we can move this up just ever so slightly. And then same thing on the bottom, although it's a little bit less complicated. We want to get the front bit down slightly. And then this bit up slightly. Not as much as the tabs. All right, so now we can see we actually have, probably went a little far, but we can fix that. We actually have some flaps. You can kind of see all the flaps. One thing that's super bothering me that you may have noticed is that everything is super sharp edges here. So we have to compensate for that. So we're going to have to go back and add yet another modifier, which is, of course, the bevel modifier. Oh, actually, let's put the bevel up before the solidify. That'll definitely help. Yes, that absolutely helps. And let's add 3 sections here. And actually, yes, now you see the overlap is doing just fine, thank you. And now it's doing great. And one thing I forgot to mention, bevel limit set to angle. That means it only hits angles greater than 30 degrees, which means it doesn't bevel absolutely everything, just what we want. So now I'm going to go ahead and tweak the flaps and make sure that the edges all work out okay. I'm also going to go ahead and add environment maps so I can kind of see what I'm doing in a rendered mode. And I just did a tutorial on environment maps, so I'm not going to go over that again. I'm just going to speed right through because it's honestly a little bit boring. But yeah, basically it involves quite a bit of tweaking just to make sure the flaps aren't intersecting in some sort of weird way. But yeah, so let's see what that looks like. Yeah, there we go. We can actually it's actually kind of nice to see this in render mode. So yeah, you can see how that tucks in. You can see how that tucks in. And we won't have the inside be quite so brown in the final render, I bet. So this is just to kind of see how these interact. So now the thing we want to do is unwrap the UVs. So we actually start putting some graphics on here. So to do that, I'm going to tab back into edit mode. Hit A to select everything or unselect everything first. Then I'm going to get rid of the sidebar, give it some space, and go into a UV image editor. And a square box is fine. So then it's actually really simple. You just hit U, unwrap, and there you have it, the Dielines. Now they're a little distorted because we were screwing around with the various things to get the tabs to all cut in the right, to hit in the right spot. So everything is a little bit more distorted than I would like. Usually that's actually probably not as big a problem as you might think. One thing we're going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and scale everything in Y to 0 just to get everything at least aligned. But you probably don't even have to do that on the tabs because frankly, who cares? You're not going to put any important art there. We are missing this notch, and that's kind of bugging me. So we may just do, you can probably just do a projection on the box. So we can just go into this tab and then we can just project from view. Now I'm going to go ahead and resize it exactly to the box. It takes a while, so I'm speeding it up. Probably honestly the best way to approach the UVs would have been to do a projection right at the beginning before we folded the Dielines, but a little late now and this is honestly fine. It worked out great. All right, another thing we can do here is merge these, or actually, I think it's a weld. Sorry, UVs, weld, and I think, yeah, you can just weld them. So it'll actually merge these correctly. So we can just hit W actually and weld them. So to test that out, let's put a grid here. We can do a new image, and then we can do, you can do a UV grid. Maybe UV grid 1024. Once we put that into our material node editor, we want to be on outside box, right? Great. So we can add an image texture, and then we've just created that UV grid. So we can put that in here, and then we're going to go into either texture or material mode and see what it looks like. It looks pretty good. Looks like it's going pretty evenly. These are not continuous on top. They should not be. So that's a good sign. So that means we can start putting some actual, and you don't actually have to connect these. You only have to be highlighting the image, the texture, to see it in texture mode. And then one last thing we're noticing is that there's a lot of little facets here still. So we want to get rid of that. But let's go back into, gray mode. Solid mode. Gray mode. So I want to see how we can get rid of that. And the obvious way to do it is smooth shading, but I'll show you what happens when we do that. So we're going to bring up the sidebar here, and we're going to go into smooth shading, and it totally screws this thing up. And actually shows a little bit of an error that we have here as well, which we can fix. So let's go ahead and fix that error actually. Go into vertex mode and then just knock this down just a wee bit. I think that may screw up our... No, that actually looks pretty good. I was going to say it could screw that up slightly, but not to worry. But so yeah, so now the edges look great, but these look crappy. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to actually go ahead and apply the bevel. So you can see I'm already on 4. So I've saved this a couple times already. So you want to save before you do the apply. And by the way, you want to do the UV unwrapping before you apply the bevel as well, because it will screw up. Believe me, I just did it. So let's save box tutorial number 5. So we have the old bevel. And then what we're going to do is we're going to apply the bevel. And then we're going to go into edit mode, and we're going to go select these faces and make them flat. So we're going to select that face. I'll just show you how to do it on one. And then you go into shading UV, and you want to make just that face flat. Doesn't that look better? It looks better. So we're going to go to the rest of these outside faces. And flatten them. And you do get an edge as you go from the face to the bevel, but that's actually kind of natural, so I actually have no complaints about that. And looking at it under render view, it looks fantastic. No little face facets and stuff at all. All right, so let's get some graphics on this thing and render this bad boy. So right now we're going to go back to the UV image editor. And I'm going to go ahead, go into edit mode. And you can see that the UVs have incorporated the bevels. So we're going to go export the UVs. Export UV layout, PNG image. One thing I don't want to do is any fill opacity, so we're going to get down to 0. And then I'm going to open Illustrator. This is Adobe Illustrator, but you can use literally anything that creates images. And since we have a square UV, we'll have to create a square image. Let's do 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters, trying to be more metric. And then we're going to place, you can't see my menu, but I'm going to File, Place. We're going to get the UVs here. They're right here. And we're going to get them the right proportion by hitting Command U. And you can see we basically have a die line here. And so we're going to want to create a separate layer for that. It's called die. We don't want to export it. In fact, we'll lock it off. So I'm going to go grab the Blender for Designers logo, copy it, paste it, bring it in there, bring some other words in there, and just kind of create a nice little artwork. And I'm actually not going to even bother with the colors, because I'll show you why in a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and export this. Remember to use artboards. All right, so let's go back to Blender and go into render mode. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and use the principled shader here. Let's do a mix color, mix RGB. So we're just going to use the alpha as the factor. And then we'll mix this in. So we'll do dark except for there. So you see blender, box. And then we're going to make the alpha be metallic. So then I'm going to use another mix shader to make the metallic bit glossy and the dark bit not glossy. The black, the kind of dark gray is going to be not very rough. And then this metallic bit, I want to be super, super smooth. And then let's get the camera in this spot. So align camera to view. Let's do a square camera here. It's way too wide angle, so let's select the camera again. And we're going to go to, instead of a 35, let's do a 60. And then that means we're going to have to back the camera off. GZZ, like a lot. Let's go back to 3D view. We'll add a plane at the bottom. This will be our, like, where we get our shadows and stuff. And then let's make that a shadow catcher. Let's first of all add a material to it. Make that solid white. Make that a shadow catcher. All right, and finally I'm going to go ahead and tweak the lighting just with the environment map. So I'm going to go back into the world nodes and just tweak that around. I did a whole tutorial on that last week, so show you how to kind of move the environment around to get those reflections to really look metallic, so you're not just reflecting nothing. And so we're basically done. We'll just let that render. Of course, we're never really done. There's always something you can add. So I just did another render, and I'm going to go put it up right here. And you can actually see the flaps a little bit better. And I actually was going to put this in my app, Mockup 3D, and still will, but it needs a little bit more work on the shading before it goes there. But I think it's good for the render. And I do want to advocate for only doing enough work you need for the shot or for the render that you need. So I think for this render, this is fine, but I think when you see it from all the angles and change it yourself, you're going to have to update the shading a little bit. It does need some work there. But I hope what I have is useful, at least for this, and we'll show you kind of how to fold boxes, how to get die lines, how to design in that way. So hopefully that's useful. And this also gives me enough of a peg to plug my app again, mockup3d.com. So take a look at it if you haven't already. You can go to mockup3d.com, or if you want to see the live demo, go to mockup3d.com/demo. And enjoy. So I hope you guys found this useful. Hope you guys enjoy it. Leave a comment, like, subscribe, and happy blendering. Thank you.